First, I want to talk about the ride line as usual. So you have the grade 0. It doesn't matter which grade 0 that you have, as long as it's just, the starter that allows you to draw a card when you go second. I'm just going to show these two together. So first, we have Senna. Senna obviously allows you to get an effect if top out of Aqua rides on top of her. You're able to soul boss one, look at the top 7 cards of your deck to get a grade 2 or a grade 3 unit and add it to your hand. And Aqua does the same, but if you ride a mermaid on top of her, which in a Krysrain deck profile or a Krysrain deck, you have Krysrain herself, and she is a mermaid, so you obviously get the effect of Aqua. So Krysrain herself, I explained it a couple of times, but she wants your deck to have different named units on your board, and she gets various effects from that. And her biggest effect is that when you at the end of battle that she attacks, she gets a divine skill, which is a once per skill ability, once per game ability. And at the end of battle she attacked, you're able to return everything to your hand and call one card from your hand, and that unit copies its critical and power to match Krysrain's. So the whole idea of the deck is to essentially build a board of different named units and essentially get all of Krysrain's abilities active. Then, when the time is right, you can use her divine skill and call a card, and it matches her power or critical. Next, I'll get the triggers out of the way. I'm playing 8 critical triggers. As long as they're different named critical triggers, or mostly different named critical triggers, it's fine. If you do have Edgewing, which is this card, this is the effect critical trigger that basically allows you to, at the end of battle, that she boosted, you can put this into your soul and choose one of your units to give 2k power. It's okay if you have more copies of this. In fact, in this deck you kind of want to have a little bit more, but I only run 2 at the moment because I only have 2. But you want at least 8 different named critical triggers in your deck, or at least different named critical triggers. It doesn't matter. It's more so for Krysrain's act ability to have different named cards on your board. Same for the heal triggers. As long as they're different named cards, you're able to essentially have better chances of you proccing off Krysrain's effect if you do have to call a trigger from it. You can use the effect heals, but I just choose to just run this because it's more consistent. Next, I'm running 3 of the effect draw triggers. So for Krysrain in this list, I do have a problem with gaining hand, just because this is sort of a rush variant. This variant of Krysrain is more rush and a little bit more combo heavy than what I'm normally used to, but that's just because the meta changed a lot. So these are good for the early game, especially if you get one defensive or even offensive. You're able to essentially just give Krysrain or another card 10k power and you draw extra card, and it has extra shield. For this list, I'm running the blue over trigger, just because when I check it, it gives me another crit. So if I check it on Krysrain, the only way I can check it is on Krysrain. I could give her 100 million and another unit 100 million if I use a divine skill and an extra critical. So this acts as like a 9th crit, as well as it allows you to get a card from your drop zone and add it to hand. Usually you want to target PGs, or if you're missing like a Franchette or a Rochelle, you're able to get it back. So this is my trigger link. Now for the grade 3s, I'm running 3 Krysrain extra Persona Ride targets. Other than that, I only run the Flame Regalis, which Flame Regalis is really good in Krysrain, because there are many times where you don't have a key piece, and if you do have a Regalis piece, you're able to essentially get another top 5 check to search out that key piece. Or if you need a card on the board that's a different name, this is also a key piece for that. As well as this is a discard target early game, so if you do have this, it's not bad for you just to pitch it for ride, and it allows you to compress your deck even more, which this deck can compress, not as much as other decks or upcoming decks, but it's still a very good card. You could opt to play the draw 2 or countercharger one, Caliburn. You could play Caliburn in this slot if you already have cards that compress your deck. But I think for Krysrain, especially in this list where it's a little bit more rush oriented, you kind of want to find your key pieces. So this is why I played the Flame Regalis. And that's all for the grade 3s. Now for the grade 2s, one of the key playmakers of this deck is Franchette. So Franchette is actually really important in this deck. There's another grade 2 as well, but she allows Krysrain to get an extra 10k, and Krysrain to target her for her act ability to get 15k power. So she's a big Gregor swing by herself, and she's able to bounce something at the end of the battle she attacked. So all of her effects are alive. If you play Krysrain and you build Krysrain the way that she wants to be played, she gets all of her effects. This also could activate on grade 2 as well. So you have more of an early game presence, as well as you can rush early, as long as you have Franchette. And Franchette is a really good card for Krysrain, and also a very good generic other decks. Next, another key playmaker of the deck, which is new by the way, is Toma. So Toma came out, I believe, during not Licia Fell's set, but it's the set after that, Omniscient Awakening, I think. So this card is really strong for Krysrain because it provides her with a card to the board if you soul blast 2 different cards from your soul, and you can call a grade 1 that isn't a sentinel to Regret Circle, and it gets 5k. And she herself is just a 15k attacker. As long as you have a Krysrain Vanguard, you don't need any other names to do it. So Toma is also an attack extender on your divine skill turn, because if you have her in hand or board, or if you drew into it, you're able to call her to call another grade 1 as a booster. Or like I said before, I mentioned this months ago, but also you could call Eshma. Eshma could call Grenadine from the deck, which if you want to know more about the Eshma package, check up here. The Eshma package in this list could also extend your divine skill turn, as well as just have well thought out soul in the CB sync if you don't have Valfer, because of Grenadine being able to provide a draw. And this card is just really strong just for what she's able to do, as well as she's able to search Rochelle, which I'll get to when I get to the grade 1s. Almost done with the grade 2s here. I have 4 Prescia in the deck. Now that I feel like the deck became more soul heavy, especially with with Toma. Prescia can now use CB a lot more, especially if you're rushed, since the deck doesn't need Enes anymore, because this is essentially like an Enes that you have in your deck. She doesn't compile or use up too much of your energy. So Prescia in the deck is actually really good, especially if you search Persona Ride. She's able to pump up your numbers to Krysrain or to a rear guard that's gonna, attack again from Rochelle to even higher extent and bounce it back. So Prescia got actually a little, she got buffed since Toma and Rochelle got added to the list. Before, she was kind of, she was still played, but to really get like free uses out of her, I had to use more energy because all my counterblast was going to Enes and Krysrain. And lastly, for the grade 2s, I play Flora. So Flora is just a tech in this list. This can literally be anything you want. So Flora allows you to, on your grade 3 turn, as long as you have 4 different names, she gets 10,000 power to the end of turn. And this is really good because if you restand it for Rochelle, she gets another 10k power. So she's hitting like the same numbers as Franchette, but this is just free. It's just a big attacker. That's literally all it is to the deck. This could be anything else that you want. Like if you want to tech in like the New Order High Five, you could definitely play that. Or if you want to play other cards in this slot, you definitely can. This is just a tech, and this is more of a rush variant. So if I go first, if I have this, I have a target for Rochelle to restand, and it can hit hard. So that's all for the grade 2s. For the grade 1s, I'm playing 3 different perfect guards, normal perfect guards, and I'm playing a Sanctitude. This could be either the grade 4 variant or the Crest variant, but I play the Crest variant for this. Again, different names are important because for Krysrain's act effect, you want to have different names on your board. If you have to call a different card for whatever reason, or you need to call a Sentinel to get Krysrain's effect activated, you can. It's a higher chance for you to get that effect off. Next, we have another lifeline of the deck is for Yuika. This could be 3 or 4. Yuika, we already know what she does. She's a really good early game piece that essentially allows you to bounce whatever attacking the attacking unit in front of it that she's boosting, as well as she gets 5k power if a unit was placed in the same column as this. So as long as your opponent's grade 3, she essentially gets plus 5k power. And she's a 13k booster. Yuka's is really good because in early game, her plus Franchette essentially allows you to attack really well. Soul can be an issue in this deck when it comes to using Toma, especially if you have Yuika, but it can be managed if you have like enough Franchettes or use it properly, or sacrifice your grade 2 rush to have more of a push on your grade 3 turn. Next, another key maker of this deck, which got fixed by Toma, by the way, is Rochelle. So Rochelle is a grade 1, and at the end of the battle, when your Vanguard with Krysrain in his name attacks, you Energy Blast 3, you can put her into the Soul, then choose a unit that was targeted by Krysrain's power gain and restand that unit, and you draw a card. So Rochelle refills the Soul for Toma, and you can search for this with Toma, and she also just extends the amount of attacks you can do, because Krysrain can only do 3 attacks before Rochelle, but now Rochelle can allow you to do 4 attacks without Divine Skill. You can't do like 5 or 6 with Divine Skill because Krysrain had to already attack, unless we get a Resander in the future. And she's really good with Toma because she fixes an issue that Krysrain had, that like if you use your Divine Skill, you're only getting 4 attacks for 1 turn and that's it. Now you can save your Divine Skill if you have multiple Rochelles, or you can grind your opponent out. But also she allowed the deck to draw a little bit more. There are times where I just use her effect if I'm going to Divine Skill anyway, just to draw. And it's really good just because of the draw effect. As well as early game, you could, if you play other cards, or there is a card upcoming that I am considering of adding to this deck, but you can also use this as like a mini like bully target from the early game. It's more of a tactic that I learned from Premium. If you call this early game, and like if you're going second, your opponent might be tempted to swing into this to save cards in your hand. Especially since we're eventually going to be getting a card that can return normal units for drop to bottom deck, and you can just search with Toma. So essentially, you're getting benefited from just calling it early and saving cards in hand if you do end up playing it, or I end up playing it. So Rochelle is just a really good card in this deck. Next, I'm going to be talking about Realm. So Realm has been in this list since day 1 of Krysrain. Essentially, she's a 13k booster, as well as when she boosts Krysrain, you Energy Blast 3. If you have 4 more different names, when your opponent would call a card from hand, if they did not place a Sentinel, they have to guard with 3 different grades. So there are many. Well, there's a reason why I still play this. A lot of lists are starting to cut this, but it's still like a Sentinel check, because if they don't have a Sentinel, like somehow on your Divine Skill turn, you could still cut their hand by a lot or force them to call many cards. As well as, even if you don't have her behind Vanguard Circle, it's still a 13k booster, which the deck can lack a little bit, even with Toma, because Franchette is usually in a column with Yuika. You want to bounce back Franchette because that's like your biggest beater in the deck, especially since she gives Krysrain a free 10k power. Realm could just be a substitute Yuika for a column. And like I said, like if you're going first with this list, you could pressure out PG, but more likely than not, they would just take the hit. So it really depends on the game state. Like if they're at high damage, like 4 or 3, they might want to PG it so they won't go to 5 instantly or just lose the game on the spot if you're going first. But you do now know that, yeah, their PG is out. If they have another one, oh well. But if they don't, then they have to try to search one for next turn. And that'll be your, Persona Ride Divine Skill turn. So she's still like an annoying card. It's balanced, but it's annoying, like like an annoying silver bullet to some decks. To some decks and to some players that just don't find PGs. Next, I'm going to talk about Rishis. She has a very simple effect that when she's placed on Rigor Circle, you choose one of your units and it gets 10k power. This card is really good. I don't know who recommended me Rishis in the deck, but ever since testing it and then more hand testing it and refining my list, this card is really strong in a lot of good cases. Because Frantic can bounce anything, you can essentially just bounce this back for free. Since it's a grade 1, it's a target from Tomala, and there are many uses where you want to give the 10k power to. If you already use your Divine Skill turn, but if you already Persona Ride, if you have 1 or 2 copies of this, you can essentially just give the 10k to Franchette or a unit you're just going to restand with Rochelle, and that's just going to be a big beater. While Krysrain also has 10k power. You could give this to Krysrain herself if you're going to do a Divine Skill turn. They might be able to PG your Vanguard once, but can they PG the Vanguard again? And it's just really funny if you get like a Rishis or 2. Having 1 is really strong because it gives you an extra 10k power that you wouldn't have. The 3k doesn't really matter of her being 3k, because if you call her from Toma, she's able to become 8k, which is just base, which is fine. But also, the front row already has enough power to subset her 3k, because if you notice from the decks other than Prussia, the grade 2s other than Prussia, they all gain at least 5k or 10k, so it offsets to like minus 5k power, so it's kind of normal. But if you give an extra 10k to a different unit, it allows you to pressure them in a different way. So I think Rishis is like a secret MVP of the deck, and she's really good, especially in this Rush variant. You could run more if you want to, like just to have the chance of you drawing 2 Rishis. But I opted to play this other than the Grenadine engine. Eshma package. Lastly, I'll play 1 Siska. Siska is just a good tech because you can call her from Toma on your Divine Skill turn. In the early game, if you do have this, you can CB1 to draw or Energy Blast 3, which energy is not really that heavy in the deck since this is used rarely. And Rochelle and it's just Rochelle really that uses the energy in this list, and Prussia, but it's more flexible now. You use this to give 10k power, so if you want on the Divine Skill Persona Ride turn, you can call this with Toma and have her get 10k power. So this would be 28k plus also the 5k from Toma. This would be 33k on the Persona Ride turn. So if only, Toma gave a crit or something, this will be even stronger. Any other skills you use, she will get stronger too on that Persona Ride turn, like a Vashablanc. And this is just a good tech. You could change this to any other grade 1. I will be changing this, or at least the grade 2 Flora, to something else when we get the card that recycles normal units. But other than that, this is just still a good card. I haven't really used it as of lately, but I think it's still a good tech in the deck. Are you struggling to find cards or sleeves for your deck? Well, I got a website for you. 50 Cards is a TCG website that ships all over the world. One of the best places for your trading card needs. Without 50 Cards, I wouldn't be able to have these amazing, beautiful looking cards in great condition in my hands. What are you waiting for? Head over to the shop and use the code Zenarion for a 5% discount for your TCG items at checkout. Use a referral link in the description below. While you're at it, hit a like, comment, and subscribe if you're enjoying the video. Happy shopping. Okay, some things I wanted to let you guys know about, this variant of the list. This variant is not super defensive because there's no defensive cards. There's no package that increases your hand size. It's literally just cards that plus just 1 or wash to give you a hand size. The main benefit of the deck is that you're just able to rush really well. So one of the key plays obviously is to just have a Franchette, a Yuika, a Franchette, a Rochelle, or Toma. If you have to call from Toma, this is one of the boards that you want to see, or at least something like a 13k booster, which is why I have Realm here. So ideally you want something like this. Then you use your Vanguard skill to choose Franchette to give 15k power. Franchette chooses Krysrain to give 10k power. Then this is where I like playing Rishis in the deck, because you're able to give either Krysrain 10k power, which is essentially, it's the same as Realm, but this is more useful because you're able to pass the 10k to another unit from the Divine skill. So Rishis can go on Franchette if you're not going to use the Divine skill, because it's just a bigger attacker, or you can put it to this to hit like more even numbers just across the board. So you're essentially giving like a pseudo Persona ride almost if you give Rishis 10k to Toma. So then you would just like, you know, you attack with this column, and then you attack with this, depending if you're using your Divine skill or not. So this is not a Divine skill turn. You attack with Franchette. Franchette skill will activate at the end of battle. You return to hand, and then this will attack. Rochelle skill will activate because you have energy. You would stand a Franchette. You would draw a card. You do your twin drive. Franchette will attack. Franchette will, at the end of battle, bounce Rishis. Then you have extra soul. You can soul blast the Rochelle to bounce this to hand. Your board is essentially like mostly gone. So against like Aristaria, you don't have to worry about lock. They will probably just lock your Yuika, which, I mean, that's fine. If you feel like you will play against Aristaria, if you're using this for like Lyrical Cup, don't play the Flame Regalis, play Ladder instead. But speaking of the Regalis piece, this card is also good because if you do use it or remove it, say like you needed a PG, oh look, you could call the PG, and then you can, you know, call Franchette to bounce it back, which is really good. Something I didn't do in one of my games was use it on grade 3 so I could search for a PG, which, I mean, I still survived the turn, but it would have made it a little bit more cumbersome. I mean, less cumbersome to like try to dig for a PG. Now, if you don't have like Franchette or Yuika on your grade 3, but you do have like a Toma and then you call Rochelle, this is where Florist comes in, because you're able to call her and she checks how many units you have, right? So as long as you have like 200 units that stay on the board that don't leave, you could call Rishis. Rishis could target her. Then you can call, it doesn't matter, I'll just call Realm here. Then Realm skill will get her effect. You could just essentially use 6 energy this turn. You attack with this unboosted. You attack with this, and then you attack with Krysrain. And then, you know, Rochelle skill will activate. She'll go into Soul. You will stand. And then since the attack is not once per turn, it is until the end of turn, she'll essentially get 20k. Because you're giving, you know, the power all to her. And if you check a trigger or a crit, which that's why I mostly play crits in this deck, this attack will be a lot harder to hit. So that's just one of the things you can do with this. Now for your Divine skill turn, it really depends on like what your hand is. Toma is really good, especially if you have the soul, because let's say I already used my Divine skill. I call Toma. Toma has a couple options. Like I say, you call Siska. If you have the energy for it, you could, and you Persona Road, that's the point. Then you can give her 10k. She gets plus 5k from Toma, and she gets a Persona Ride, so she's 33k. And this is whatever power your Krysrain was, which is why Rishis is really good, because she essentially gives her extra 10k power that you would have not have gotten. You would have only gotten from a trigger, plus Franchette. So she scales your Divine skilled unit that you called for the skill. I mean, for the turn. Or if you call Toma, you can call something like a Yuika to bounce back at the end of battle. She won't get the 5k power though. You can set it for next turn. You could call Rochelle. You can't call PG. Or if you really need more power, you just call Rishis from deck. And since it's there, if there was a way to like bounce this back, if there's a way to bounce this back, like at the end of your turn, I would play it, but there's no way to do that unless you, there's no way to do that in this deck. It's physically impossible on a Divine skill turn. I forgot to talk about Prescia too. Prescia using her skill on Krysrain is not bad, especially if you have Rishis, because you're essentially like you're cheating out a whole like CB cost that you would have done for to Franchette. If you just pull all Krysrain, do these effects, do it on Krysrain again. Now she's getting 15k plus 10k, which is something that the deck could not have been able to do before without Pressure, but also just without Rishis too, because you're essentially giving more power to, you know, the divine skilled unit and Krysrain as well, which most people just PG Krysrain. But if the deck keeps hitting hard power, and if you have like a pretty decent early game, excuse me, a pretty decent early game, then it'll be kind of hard to guard all these attacks. But on my winning turn for one game, I already divine skilled, so I didn't really have much. I survived the turn. I Persona Road. I essentially just had to make a mini Herminia turn. So I Persona Road. I had Franchette. I think I had Yuika. I did that too. I used the Flame Regalis to remove from game. I ended up getting a Pressure, which I called, and I had a Rochelle in hand because I drew one. Then I gave the power to Franchette. Then I had a Rishis. I called Rishis to the Franchette. Then I used Krysrain's skill. I drew it to another Rishis, but before doing another Rishis, before calling Rochelle, I called another Rishis over here, called over to call Rochelle. And that's essentially like how I got like a big rearguard column. The other column didn't matter. He was at 5 damage. I just wanted to hit once. I could have gave the 10k power to here to force more cards in hand, but Krysrain already had to crit, so there was going to try to guard it anyway. Plus Persona Ride, plus this. So I just did that. I attacked with Franchette boost. Well, no, Rochelle. No, Rochelle was over here. Not Rochelle. Reach is over here. I didn't have that. So my board was like this. Just pretend this is another Reaches. So it's like this. I attacked with Franchette boosted. It was 68. Well, I attacked with this column first. Then Franchette. I bounced back. I think I bounced back this. I don't think I had 2 Reaches. I think it was just 1. Then I attacked. Use this skill. I think I got a crit. No, I didn't get a trigger. I restood. Did my dry check. I attacked again. Used the skill to bounce this at the end of turn. But I killed from that. So like it was like 68 to 70k attack for that turn. But really it was because of the Flame Regalis that got me to Pressure to essentially like pump up her power because I already used my divine skill turn. So overall, I think this list can be improved. I do not have high fives yet. I don't know how high five would work with the deck for this list specifically. Just because there isn't enough space. I can run the order. It just isn't enough space in the list because everything else in the list seems like they like. The high five is a really good order. Don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's more so for a resource type of deck, like an order based deck, which this list is more aggro. I could have run even more aggro pieces if I want to. So I could have probably ran Grenadine, the Eshma package to increase like the early game of going second, especially if I had like 6 energy. I could have just called Grenadine, or just play it to extend my divine skill turn. But again, the same reason why I didn't play I'm not really that influenced with the Eshma package in Pacifica is because you need a Persona Ride. It's the same issue in this. Although the different names do help and the extra soul does help. I think Eshma with the extra soul helps. So potentially I can look into that for more soul options, but regardless, I think Krysrain is like okay. If you do bring her for Lyrical Cup, there are probably other variants you could play. You could play like the Wallista Ride line, obviously. You could play High Five in the deck as well and play a Restrega, which is probably like better to compress your deck. You could just be missing like some key important pieces, or you're just cutting like your max pieces to something else. So that's just how I feel. But regardless, if you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. And I'm Zenarion, and I'm signing off.